You're listening to 3 Days Through the Wood, a novel by Bear Mawasagi, as read by the author. Chapter 8. You Don't Know What the Nose Knows. Would you three put those down before you break something? Graceful arcs of thrown plates and cups and pointed utensils with dangerously sharp edges all came to a sudden halt as the flying Rambaldi brothers stood up, caught the implements they had been tossing between themselves with practiced ease, and bowed before the gathered patrons of Mama Marie's breakfast, lunch, and occasionally dinner place. A polite round of applause followed. Mama Marie shook her head at the bearded brothers as she passed, chiding them with a wry smile. She was a large woman, as wide as she was tall, and very strong. There were 3 trays balanced over her arms, and another in each of her hands. Mugs of meads and coffees and other more adult-looking drinks were slid across counters and long tabletops to the gathering crowd still fighting to squeeze their way through the cobbled walls. A pot of stew, very similar to the one Grizzly had served the previous day, was simmering over an open fire. Somehow, even with all the noise and bustle, Chirp was still the noisiest and bustliest of them all. He stood atop his seat in their far-corner booth, clapping and cheering for the jugglers. "Sit down," Pill hissed, reaching for the boy. Chirp danced around his hand and clapped even louder. "I'm not even sure we're supposed to be here." "Why?" asked Chirp in a comic and too loud impression of Pill's dire whisper. "Mama Marie said we could sit anywhere we wanted." "Yes, sit," Pill enthused. "Not dance on top of her tables." "I'm not on a table, I'm on a chair." "Still, cut it out. Everyone else is doing it." "That's why I don't think we're supposed to be here," said Pill. They had delivered Barb's wagon to the right inn, but in the hustle and bustle of the gathering festival-goers, they had somehow been caught in the press of workers. They were swept into their seats before they could even say anything, and had been unable to ford their way back out through the crowds still choking the roads behind them. "Haven't you noticed that everyone here is a little bit odd?" A man twice as tall as anyone else in the room stooped past them at that moment, his dinner plate ears turned in their direction. Pill bit his tongue. The man was hunched so low that his head was nearly at his knees, and still he had to stoop to keep from smacking against the wooden crossbeams lining the ceiling. "Nope," said Chirp. He had settled back into his seat at least, and was playing with a napkin, ripping it into increasingly smaller halves. "Where's my mom? You said she'd be here." "Not here," said Pill. "Not at the inn specifically. I meant probably somewhere in town. Do you see her around?" "No." "Has she ever brought you to this place before?" "Maybe," said Chirp, biting his lip in deep thought. "Everything smells familiar, but more fresh." The wide shadow of Mama Marie crossed over their table, eclipsing the light of the hearth. Pill looked up to see her broad smile gracing them. "And what can I be bringing the 3 of you?" she asked. "Don't you mean 2? asked Pill. He looked around their small booth for a hidden companion, and out the window beside them for good measure. On the streets he could see the crowds were growing larger, throwing streamers and straw men through the air and onto the walls, while others walked by with colorful tents destined for the fields. "Sorry, hun, been a busy day, and we're just getting started. I'm already getting cross-eyed." Mama Marie smiled apologetically, blowing a long stray ring of hair from her face. The rest was contained beneath a bursting-to-full hairnet. "Thought I saw your sister sitting there with you." "Does she know me?" Pill wondered. "Do I have a sister?" "Guess I better take it easy on the soup slinging," Mama Marie continued, laughing to herself. "I tell you, I'm spent. One wrong throw and someone's going to catch an onion to the eye. I don't need that on my conscience again. Now, what'll you 2 have?" "Soup," Chirp breathed hungrily. "It's technically more of a stew, hun. I guess I misled you a bit on that one, but it is delicious. And around here we like to use our please and thank yous, please and thank you." "One stew, please." "One stew it is. Thank you." "Nice to see a boy with a healthy appetite," said Mama Marie, turning to smile at Pill. "And for yourself, what'll it be today?" "Today? Maybe that means I've ordered things here on other days. Maybe I'm a regular," Pill thought, studying the lines of Mama Marie's face. Her boisterous demeanor, her thick arms like tree trunks, her brilliant green eyes hidden beneath that ringlet of loose red hair. None of it seemed familiar to him in the slightest. "I'll have a stew as well, please," he said dejectedly. "2 stews, then." Mama Marie nodded. That's easy enough. I'll come by with some water in a minute for the both of you, unless you're wanting something stronger. Yes, please. No, thank you, Pill said for the both of them. He couldn't think of a more dangerous combination than Chirp and caffeine. All right, well, you two keep on practicing then. Mama Marie smiled again before wading off into the crowd. Where the crowd wouldn't part for her, she parted them, using herself much like the scoop on the front of a train meant to muscle cows off the tracks. What are we practicing? Asked Chirp. I have no idea, said Pill, who was studying the strangers of the inn. The flying Rambaldi brothers were already at it again, now including some very sharp-looking soufflé forks into their juggling act. They also had musical accompaniment courtesy of Tiny Harry and the Hootenanny twins on the banjo and jugs. Pill only knew their names because everyone else in the room did, and had greeted them vociferously at their arrival. A small circle was quickly forming on the floor, and several patrons began to stomp their feet in rhythm. Pill slapped his hands on the table. The sound was lost beneath the din. She thinks we're entertainers, he realized. No one noticed the outburst save for Chirp, who was pulling at the very last shreds of his napkin's existence. That makes sense. No, it doesn't, Chirp, and it's not a good thing. This place isn't meant for us. We have to leave. Why? Well, unless you have any incredible hidden talents you've been keeping from me, I don't think we'll fit into whatever they're planning today. I have lots of talents, said Chirp. I'm good at finding frogs and rabbits, chickens too, you saw. That's impressive, sure, but I don't think it's something you can do on stage. Chirp sniffed proudly. Watch me, he said. His snow of napkin dust followed in his wake as he raced off to join the stampeding crowd, vanishing somewhere between the forest of tall legs and tailed jackets. Chirp, get back here! Here's that stew, hun, said Mama Marie. Her broad form blocked his exit from the table as she set 2 bowls deftly down. Where's your little friend gone? I wish I knew, said Pill. The stew in front of him looked hearty and thick, and simmered orange with chunks of meat and potato bobbing to the top. It smelled buttery, rich with herbs, and he could see a pool of oil forming along the surface. Most importantly, at least to him, the bowl was hot to the touch, cracking through the ice of his fingers. Sighing, he set it aside and went after Chirp. Moving through the crowd was harder than it looked. There were so few seats left that many of the patrons were sitting in each other's laps or otherwise gathering in concentric circles further and further out from their tables. Loud voices called out joyously, many of them speaking rapidly in tongues Pill didn't recognize, or were otherwise heavy in accents too thick for him to parse. Still more were too theatrical not to be noticed, with heavy baritones rumbling through the noise and singing songs that reverberated off the walls and through his teeth. Besides the warm air of the fire and stew and the sense of the kitchen in full frenzy, the inn was also filled with the warm comforts of life and good company, with high spirits abounding in the bounds of the tiny walls.
Sorry, young fellow,
said a man with arms near wide as his torso. Pill had walked face first into his back, but the impact felt like it could have been a brick wall. A broad hand with fingers thick as his arm gripped tightly to his shoulder.
Didn't see you there.
The man twirled a long mustache around his finger before parting the crowd for Pill, taking 2-3 men in each arm and brushing them aside like leaves.
Make way, everyone make way. Leave room to walk.
Thank you, Pill mumbled. He didn't like having attention on himself and kept his eyes to the floor, hoping to avoid the notice of anyone else. Not that many people paid him much mind. They were all involved in their own conversations and antics, practicing for the festivities or just enjoying the good cheer. Pill was becoming increasingly aware of his discomfort with crowds and wished it was one of those things he hadn't remembered about himself. Every time he tried to push, or more often awkwardly sidle through the crowd, he tried to imagine that they were towers and towers of books instead, and that he was standing in a quiet library. But the cheer continued, and a crowd of men and women were laughing, gathered in a circle larger than all the others, and Pill continued to worry that their mirth was directed at him somehow. The very idea was absurd, he knew. They weren't even looking his way. He couldn't escape the feeling that everyone in the inn could sense how supremely uncomfortable he was, and that they were all taking part in some secret joke at his expense. Every wayward glance his way was another spy looking at him, trying to secretly gauge his reaction. The rug was being pulled out from beneath him very slowly, even as he walked. The truth was hidden behind a curtain. His thoughts racing in paranoid fantasy, the only thing Pill could be certain about was that he hated crowds. A familiar heap of auburn hair flew wildly through the center of the group, however. Pill caught quick glimpses of Chirp walking through the crowd, gesturing theatrically from the top of a table. Everyone had pulled their cups and plates and glasses away so that he had room to pace around. "Rhubarb pie," he announced, pointing to a man who had his mouth held wide.
"He's right,"
yelled the man, gesturing his astonishment to the crowd. "Me next, try me," said a woman. Everyone made way while she stumbled forward to exhale in a large, exaggerated fashion. Chirp tasted the cloud of her breath with stern consideration. "Old grapes," he choked. "A lot of old grapes."
"No surprise there,"
yelled another voice in the crowd. The woman slapped him. Pill worked his way to the table. "Chirp," he whispered urgently. "What are you doing?" "I'm entertaining," yelled Chirp.
"Damn right he is,"
agreed someone in the crowd.
"Give it a try, kid,"
said another strange voice too close to Pill's ear. Suddenly, many hands were pushing him forward.
"This kid can guess anything."
"Yeah, come on, Pill, give it a try." Chirp did a little jig as he yelled, in time with the Hootenanny twins. Tiny Harry was nowhere to be seen, and so he was dancing only to the lone polka rhythm of whistling jugs in an awkward two-step. "I can guess the last thing you ate just by smelling your breath." "You know what I last ate, Chirp," said Pill. He looked uneasily at the crowd around him, who were pressing too close. "You were there." "Nope, you haven't eaten a thing since we first met," said Chirp. "Grizzly gave us bread and stew and other stuff too, but you didn't eat any of it. You barely even sipped your mead." "There, you guessed it. The last thing I had was mead," said Pill. "And you didn't even have to smell my breath." He tried to grab at Chirp. "Come on, let's go." Chirp danced further down the table out of his reach. "No," he said stubbornly. A chorus of oohs fell over the crowd, giving Pill the vague recollection of having once been called to the principal's office. He could feel his face reddening. A few in the crowd were even laughing. "Let me smell your breath. I bet I can guess the last thing you ate even if it was a week ago. If I'm wrong, then I'll stop, okay?" Pill sighed, but the sound was lost beneath the cheers. This whole spectacle was ridiculous and embarrassing even before Chirp drove the final nail into the coffin. "But if I'm right," he continued, "you have to come up on stage with me." "This isn't a stage," Pill protested weakly. "It's a table. You sit at them, like how we should be sitting at ours right now, eating stew."
"Oh, come on," said a young man in the crowd.
"Don't you know all the world's a stage?" added a twiggy thespian.
"Give the kid a chance. The nose always knows."
That last one caught with the crowd. Most of the inn were wandering over now, even Mama Marie, who had stopped slinging drinks and stews to watch alongside the others. A chant was growing among them, like an echo coming back out the mouth of a cave many times magnified. "Nose, nose, nose, nose," they all cried in unison. Pill's face was so red he could have hidden among the jam jars. He peeked a lone eye up to Chirp, keeping the rest of himself to the floor. "If I do this," he grumbled, "will you please sit down with me?" "Only if I'm wrong," Chirp said in a sing-song voice. "But if I'm right, you come up here. We'll stick together either way." Even embarrassed with how on the spot he was, Pill couldn't help but feel his nerves calm somewhat at the sentiment. He even managed to smile despite himself. "All right," he said nervously. "Give it a shot." A darker, more selfish part of him knew that he could simply lie even if Chirp guessed correctly. The crowd cheered. Pill, who wasn't quite tall enough to meet Chirp's table-augmented height, felt himself being lifted suddenly by the crowd and set onto a chair. Not wanting to prolong the spectacle any further than needed, he exhaled, mouth wide open. Chirp leaned close. "This is ridiculous," Pill thought again. Half the crowd was watching anxiously, and the other half were cheering wildly for Pill having stepped up. Another more discreet half of each of those halves were placing bets among themselves as to whether or not the Nose, as people were now calling him, would manage to continue his winning streak. A few others were trying to push the name The Hound, but it wasn't taking. Chirp pulled his head back slowly, not because Pill's breath was bad, but because the scent had seemed to stump him, at least momentarily. A few eager voices tried to collect their winnings early, saying he was clearly beaten. Chirp started to shake his head, and the crowd fell to a hush. He raised a finger. Someone blurted out,
Well?
The rest shushed him to silence. You haven't eaten in a while, huh? Said Chirp, looking concerned at Pill. No, I probably haven't, said Pill. We've kind of had other things going on. But there's always time to eat. Just make your guess and let's go. Hold on, said Chirp, raising his finger again. I know it was something sweet. The crowd murmured excitedly. Pill rolled his eyes. Yeah, that was the mead, Chirp. You were there when I drank it. No, that's not it, said Chirp. Honey is sweet, but it's not buttery? Something sweet with butter. It almost smells like poison. The crowd gasped. A few others laughed nervously.
He's on the trail, one of them yelled.
I didn't eat poison, Chirp, said Pill. No, but it wasn't something good for you, said Chirp. It's something Mom told me to stay away from, I know it. He bit and chewed his lip in the same way Barb had done, deep in thought. Can I smell your breath again? He needs a second whiff, a woman whispered, worried. Oh, I hope he gets it, said a grandmotherly-looking woman beside her. You're not getting a second chance, Chirp. That wasn't the deal. The entire inn gasped in shock at that. There were a few come-ons and give him a chances thrown around, as well as one man who tried to start the crowd to booing. He was shushed, but the shaming had already worked. Fine, said Pill. One more chance. Chirp straightened out his sweater and flattened his hair like he was off to a job interview, or maybe out to close the deal of a lifetime. Someone down the table a ways started to beat on the wood like it was a drum, and others joined in until a rallying rumble was thundering throughout the room, from folk at their tables all the way to the tall man at the far walls, rapping his hands on the roof supports. Even Mama Marie joined in, smacking her hands as hard as anyone. Chirp got close, uncomfortably so. Determination was shining in his two large eyes, which narrowed to a fine point in thought. He pulled back from Pill's mouth dramatically, like a lion tamer escaping the bite, or a magician ripping aside the final curtain. You last ate. The crowd leaned in. A chocolate pancake. Somewhere in the recesses of Pill's mind, errant thoughts struck together in a symphony of life and color and sound and scent, sudden splendor playing out before his eyes like a picture show. He could see again from the far corner of a large table his family. His siblings were reaching eagerly for bowls laden heavy with sausage and bacon and scrambled eggs and the good things that they all made on the farm, because he did live on a farm. A large woman, the woman he had baked bread with in another memory, his mother, was doling out the portions for everyone. 2 brothers and 2 sisters sat with him. They all looked like reflections of each other somehow, like a funhouse mirror. A sister and brother on each side, he remembered, with him lost somewhere in the middle. His eldest brother sat at the right of the head of the table, asking question after question to a figure shrouded in darkness at its end. A shadowed man. Something about the sight made Pill's heart ache. Well? A man in the crowd asked excitedly. His hand clapped at Pill's back and slapped him back to the present. Did he get it? The heaviness in Pill's stomach choked on the words. He forced a lump the size of an egg down his throat. Chirp stood nearby, eagerly waiting for the answer. Pill croaked. He did. The crowd erupted into a round of cheers that shook to the core of the stone walls. A chorus of barking men started to chant as Mama Marie rattled her ladle in a heavily beaten pot, and a more ordered sort of chaos settled back into the ramble and bramble of the inn. All right now, all right, she called. Don't you lot go bringing down my roof again. Many sorry Maries, and my apologies, and won't happen agains, were muttered through the crowd as everyone started walking back to their tables. The show was over for most of them. A small circle did stay with Chirp, who was still shining with pride. Told you I'm good, he said. Yeah, said Pill faintly. You really are.
And now you've got to join him,
said the deep baritone, and the heavily muscled man lifted Pill like a teacup and set him gently on the table before he could even protest.
Go on then, son. What's your talent?
Me? Pill asked, suddenly very nervous again. I don't, Yes? The remnant crowd leaned in. I don't think I have any talents, said Pill. Nonsense, said Mama Marie. She plowed through the crowd. We're all performers here, and we all do it with something that's unique to us. The crowd nodded in agreement. Now, I might not be able to juggle like the Rimbaldis here, or sniff out a last meal like the Nose, but I can scratch up a pretty good meal.
Oh, damn right she can.
Don't cuss in my establishment, please, Mama Marie said pleasantly. Her eyes stayed on Pill. That boy you're with was brave enough to share his talent, she goaded gently, even as strange as some might call it. You may not realize it yet, but you've got something that only you can do, that only you can show to the world. I'm not lying, though, said Pill. I don't think I have a talent like that. I never really was good at most things. I don't think I liked doing much. Mostly I just stayed in my room all the time. Mama Marie nodded, but didn't say anything. Instead, she drew up a chair and sat down. Others started to do the same. We were farmers, said Pill. My brothers, my sisters, my mom, my dad. He was a farmer. He was quiet, always said that he didn't care much for the limelight. Not that he didn't appreciate those who shared it, he added quickly, drawing a few laughs from the crowd. Sparks of memory lit the darkness of his mind like distant stars, and Pill reached for their light. He used to try and encourage us however he could, trying to get us to be, well, whatever we wanted. Farming's honest work, he used to say, but there isn't much excitement in it. He preferred the quiet, I think. I think I'm like him that way. The rest of the crowd had sat down and settled to a quiet, watching Pill as he paced around the table. Even Chirp sat himself down next to a large bowl of pudding, surreptitiously dipping in with a large spoon while the others weren't looking. My brothers and sisters, well, there were 5 of us, you see, so it was always kind of a fight to get any attention. I mostly got by on the scraps. You grow up surrounded by noise, and you start trying to find quiet wherever you can. A few in the crowd laughed at that, or otherwise nodded in agreement. Mama Marie watched in rapt attention. Pill told them what he could remember of his home life. There was a red farmhouse with white shutters, surrounded somewhere by a vast field of wheat. There were animals with names he couldn't remember, not that he couldn't remember what a cow or a pig or a chicken was, he knew all of those quite well, but he knew he had given them all names of their own. Everything needed a name, he thought, but he couldn't recall theirs, just like he couldn't recall his own. Pill was a nickname, a moniker given by the errant thoughts of the forest, but for all he told the crowd of fighting over sausages at pancake breakfasts, or scrambling for the last of the scrambled eggs, or the heaviest cuts of bacon, he still couldn't remember who he was or where he fit into that picture. He did change small parts of the story, editing it just enough so that the crowd wouldn't really know him or what he was going through. He told the story in a way that it became less a truth and more a feeling, because feelings are how we understand each other truer than anything. By the time he finished the tale, he had the rapt attention of nearly everyone in the inn, and they clapped politely at its ending. A few folk even whistled their applause as he stepped down from the table with Chirp. They each took their bows, took their applause, and then took their place back in the far corner booth out of sight of the others. Let me just refresh those for you, said Mama Marie, scooping up the cold bowls of stew and balancing them on her arm with a myriad collection of other mugs and glasses. That was a nice story you told, she said, and a good story deserves a good dessert. I'm thinking something light given the festivities still ahead, but I'm sure I got something with a little chocolate in it. She smiled at the both of them. And no charge for entertainers around these parts, she added. Good job, kids. She smiled politely and backed away into the crowd, who had already returned to their various shows and practices. The strong man was lifting a chair while another sat in it playing the fiddle. A storm of dancers was forming at their feet. Was that all true? Chirp asked as he ate his fresh stew. Pill pushed the second bowl over to him as well. His mind was still somewhere else, and his stomach had gone with it. Yeah, he said, thinking on the life that had played in his mind, trying to bridge the disconnect from himself. Why couldn't he remember it all? What had taken it from him? Most of it, anyway, he added quietly. At least, the parts that mattered.